Welcome to Earthworm Slumber Party,
where we explore big ideas playfully.
My name is Nisha, and I am really trying hard to keep a couple of my plants alive.
My name is Opulence, and I actually have a little joke.
Wee!
Nisha, how did the snail call for help?
I don't know. Tell me.
With his shell phone.
I totally was like, shell? I don't know. I couldn't get that far. I love that. Wee!
I love that little joke because it makes me think of this meme that was going around when that Drake song was really everywhere. Mm-hmm. You can call me on my shell phone.
That's good. That's good. Maybe that's where Drake got it from.
I think so.
Found the
I actually think that's been proven.
Yeah.
Anyways. How are you, Nisha?
I'm doing good.
I think today... Oh, wait. I'm jumping ahead. What are you composting?
I am composting... I'm not gonna lie, I'm not so prepared for this. I'm composting being okay with like not being so responsive. I don't know if that's like a composting or like feeling the need to immediately respond. I'm composting that.
I love that. Mm-hmm. My old mentor Miller used to say, urgency without emergency is violence.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Okay, yeah. I was just going to say, even like right before we started recording, me, you, and Dalya, our producer, we were chatting, and then I had to go to the bathroom, and I put in our chat, like, gonna pee, be back really quick, and I got back, and I saw that I hadn't actually sent it. It was just in the chat box, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't send it. And I was like, nobody cares. Like, you guys were just talking, and it was fine, and I'm like... Wow, like I've such a like I need to respond, and it's like a feeling like if I don't, then like I'm not showing up in the way I'm supposed to. People can't rely on me, and it's like everything's gonna be okay, and that doesn't make me unreliable. And it's okay if I'm a little unreliable sometimes. Okay, it's okay. I'm a human. That too.
Yeah, I think a lot about how like we live in a world with more work and like more mental clutter than what existed years ago, where it's like, okay, we're tracking passwords, and now we're contacting each other all the time. Like before cell phones, we sent letters, we talked to the people around us, and now we live in a world with phones, and we're calling and we're texting and we're emailing and we're scrolling, and it's like I think it can create a culture of over communication, honestly. So I love this.
Yeah, it calls back to the urgency. Like suddenly I have to be more urgency, but why? Actually, I have a cute story. I just shared with you and Dalya that I was at this writing conference over this past weekend, and I bumped into a couple people from high school. This was over 25 years ago when we didn't have cell phones. Like this was the 90s, the late 90s, and I was thinking about how we would pass notes to each other. We had like notebooks too. Like if I had a friend, I'd be like, okay, this is my notebook between me and, Andrea or whatever. And I was thinking about it. We were in a session together, and one of the girls I went to high school with, I suddenly heard her tear a piece of paper out of her notebook. And then she folded it up and she gave it to me. And she's like, here's a note like the old days. And I was like, oh my God, it was so sweet. But I was also like, this is how we communicated. Like we waited till passing period. We didn't, I'm like, what do people do? What do kids do these days? I don't know. But like, there was so much anticipation for getting the notebook or getting a note from someone, And yeah, I want to bring those notebooks back.
Wow, I love that. And it kind of relates to what I'm composting, which is fear of connection. I have been thinking a lot about how I think like as a child, I especially remember this feeling, but just having this strong feeling of like wanting to connect with others so badly and so deeply. I was reflecting on that this week when I was reading an article that was like, historically, each generation has kind of been critical of the next generation coming up. And they're saying that actually they're noticing a shift in that trend with the way people relate to Gen Z. And there's actually a lot of empathy and sympathy for this generation and what it's like for them to have like come into a digital world, to experience such huge levels of loneliness and isolation, of tech addiction, to like withstand, to enter into a job market impacted by COVID, and how what they notice is like when talking to older generations, people consistently express gratitude for having like dodged a bullet and like just like real sympathy. And so I feel that because I'm like, wow, I felt so disconnected as a child and so longing for connection. There's a little bit of paradox or irony in it where it's like the internet is supposed to make us the most connected ever, and yet it creates such deep isolation. And that is a little bit of a Buddhist proverb, this idea that if you chase something, you will find the opposite because life is so temporary. So if you're always chasing food, you're always finding hunger, right? Like, and in this way, it's like, wow, all the language we use around the internet, more connected, our global network. And it's like, yes. And like, how has this like sense of quote unquote connection driven us further from each other? But all that to say for myself, I did grow up in a very like rural environment. I wasn't really around the most people. I was and I wasn't, but like I spent a lot of time desiring connection. But I think I felt like when I finally was around people, it was actually kind of overwhelming and overstimulating for me. And so I think I've been navigating that paradox for a lot of my life. And I'm really grateful that in this like new, I guess in the past few weeks, I've been more gentle with my desire to connect and also like the sense of anxiety I can get in social spaces. And I feel that I've actually been able just to like encourage myself to just be 1% more present at each party. And after kind of doing this practice for a couple of months, I'm like, wow, I kind of feel 20% more present. And it's like, that's actually a lot. And so I'm really glad to be like, yeah, I feel myself just naturally. I was talking with a friend about how when snakes shed their skin, and if they're having trouble shedding, you can soak them, but you're not meant to pull the skin off. They're meant to just like nuzzle things and for it to like come off on its own. I'm really glad to have kind of be gently shedding some of my isolation tendencies and like some of the anxiety that keeps me from fulfilling my desire of connection.
Yeah. It sounds like a titration to connect. You're titrating like 1%, 2%, like not needing to be like all full on. And that's been, look at your 20%. That's amazing.
Quite a lot of percentage. Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of connection,
we are talking about pet grief today. Talking about beloved pets that have changed our life and also what it's like to grieve a pet. And I think this topic truly gets into grief as an expression of love, because we know grieving pets and losing pets can be so difficult and painful.
Absolutely. So yeah, did you want to share what your experience is with grief, love, and pets?
Yeah, I kind of have two. So one is when I was like 10, my dad had this aquarium set up with these fish. And it was mostly just goldfish and this one giant I don't know what they're called, like a sucker fish, like a large black and white fish that would just eat the algae in the tank. And then my dad got really busy at work and he gave the responsibility of cleaning up the fish tank to my brother, who, like any good older brother, passed it on to me. And there was really some family neglect going on here. And by neglect, I just mean like my parents were really busy in their business, because taking care of this pet was actually meant changing the water of like, I don't know, like probably like a 20-gallon tank every week. And I don't know how that landed on me as a 10-year-old. But basically, I felt so overwhelmed with the task, I just didn't do it.
Oh.
And then what happened is the water in the tank evaporated and got really low. And essentially, this large fish died. And they had actually gotten this fish when I was born to like placate my brother, because there was a new child that would take up attention. So this fish was the same age as me. I think I was 13 when he passed. And I felt so much shame and so much responsibility for his death. But now when I look back on it, I'm like, no, it's okay. That was a confusing, that was a big, I don't know. When I say it, I'm like, actually, I probably was old enough to do it, like to clean out this tank. But it's also, as I reflect on the story, it's such a like younger sibling, just like having something thrust upon you. But I think that death also represents the responsibility we take on when we welcome animals into our lives, and what it means for a creature to depend on you for its care. My second significant experience of pet loss was with my cat, Venus, the first cat I ever owned as an adult. And I adopted him when he was 8 years old. And I misremembered the age I adopted him at. I thought I adopted him when he was like 5. And so I did not actually realize that at the time he passed, he was 13. And I only realized it when I was going through his records. I was like, oh, I thought you were significantly younger. I thought you were like 9. You're 13. It makes sense that you passed. That's like actually very old for a cat. But my cat Venus, I adopted him as an adult, and he was really independent, really sweet. You know, he was clearly a street cat. He was really affectionate to others to try and beg for food. And then he would often, he was found on the side of the highway in a pet carrier. So I think that he was like a street cat, and then someone no longer wanted him around their business. And so they like trapped him and like abandoned him on the side of the road. And when he became my pet, I watched him realize that he no longer had to beg for food. And so he went from being a very social cat to being extremely antisocial and only connecting with me. And I loved that for him. But basically, one day I came home and he wasn't eating, and the vets were like, oh, his kidneys are failing. But like, we're going to offer a lot of medical intervention to see if he can live for another 2 years. But if that happens, he'll need to receive dialysis every 2 weeks. I was really overwhelmed by the cost of it, and also by the fact that like this cat was passing, and I was so upset. And I was like, okay, I'll put it on a credit card. We're going to make it work. That night I took him home, and I was like, okay, he was an indoor-outdoor cat. And I was like, no, you're just going to stay inside because we have to get back to the vet early tomorrow morning. But he did slip outside. My neighbor came up to talk to me, and he walked onto the steps and hung out with us for a minute. And then he walked down the steps to his favorite tree. And then he walked out the back gate. And I was like, oh, let me go grab him so he doesn't go far, so I can take him to the vet the next morning. But that was actually the last time I saw him. And I felt a lot of guilt and shame for things that I now realize I couldn't control. I couldn't control that he got sick. Like, that's what happens. And like, even his choice to leave, I've come to realize that it was his choice. And at the time I was like, oh no, he's going to have a painful, uncomfortable death. I should have, like, instead of being euthanized painlessly. And my friend kind of gently explained that actually for my cat, being euthanized in a room full of lights surrounded by doctors, that probably would have been really uncomfortable for him. It actually is probably much more comfortable for him to find a place in private to pass. And I think what I really realized was my sense. I felt that if I accepted his death or even accepted him dying on his own terms, that would mean I didn't miss him or I didn't love him. It would, I felt this internal struggle of if I accepted his death, it was an indicator of my lack of care or love. And I came to realize that that's just not true. It's just not true. And so, yeah, his death really changed me. But I actually had a dream with him a couple weeks after he went missing. And in my dream, I was a secret agent and I was getting into a Jeep. I was pretending to be like a young, fun surfer girl. And I was like, yeah, let's get into this Jeep. And when I got into the Jeep, I noticed that he was hiding in the Jeep and we made eye contact. And he was in his cat way. He was like, don't tell anyone I'm here. And I was like, oh my God, Venus is a secret agent too. And then as we were driving the Jeep, the Jeep drove off the side of a cliff. And I jumped out and parachuted out with a bunch of people. But Venus stayed in the Jeep. And I was like, oh, his mission continues without me elsewhere. And I just felt so lucky to have gotten to know him at all as a cat.
Wow, what a beautiful story. Wow. I have a cough drop in my mouth, everyone. So just so you know, if I sound a little funny, I'm just dealing with some throat things. But what I really hear in that story, especially about Venus, is like Venus came from like circumstances where they were like abandoned to some level. Then they found a home with you and like loved you, and like what a beautiful feeling of belonging for both of you, you know? And then in the end, you know, as we know, cats, yeah, like that isn't comfortable to like be euthanized in that way. They'll just want to do it their own way. But it's like, I don't know. I wonder, would you feel like there was like a kind of like a re-traumatization maybe, or something like that theme of abandonment? I keep thinking about that. Even though I'm glad that, I actually love that you had that dream. I think that was just such a beautiful like call back to the connection you had with Venus. So I thought that was beautiful too.
Yeah. I think that some cats are like very open and want to be with their owners when they pass. I think the truth is just like I wanted to adopt an adult cat and I did. And a part of that also means like when you adopted an adult cat, you know that they will pass sooner because, it's just different. They're in a different place of their life cycle. It also means that this cat is who they are when they find you. Like Venus had a whole life before me. And so I think that he was really clearly saying like he did not want dialysis. He did not want that. He just wanted to die. And like that's okay. And I think like his ability to choose that for himself and to make it a reality. In the moment, I felt like an irresponsible pet owner for allowing it to happen, even though when I really look at it, it's like it wasn't necessarily a choice. It just happened. And you have to let creatures choose, like people get to make that choice. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just know that he was such a wild, like almost feral cat that like, yeah, he did not want that dialysis. He said, let me go. But I also, this is so random, but on my birthday one year, I got a bunch of messages from some Instagram boutique asking me to be an influencer. I got like 3 or 4 from different accounts, but they were all linked to the same brand. and the brand was Venus Jewelry. So I do feel like Venus reaches out to me pretty regularly, honestly.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, it just kind of goes to show that there's like consent with pets. Like we just have to listen to it and we have to observe and witness it because it's there. Yeah.
What about you? What's your experience with grief and pets?
So I never had pets until I have my 2 cats who are alive and sitting on the bed right now. I have had like a couple fish. They were never really like mine. But I didn't really have like a very strong connection. They were betta fish. But I think with my cats, I have a lot of anticipatory grief. I have a lot of like, oh my God, what will happen? Who's going to go first? Like, I remember, for the most part, knock on wood, my cats have been pretty healthy. Sonia was sick once and I was like a mess that day. I didn't know what was wrong with her. I took her to the vet. Like I could not stop crying. I'm glad I was working from home because I was just like crying all day. And I'm like, oh my God, if I can't handle this, like what is going to happen? And I think about it so much, just thinking about, as someone who was never raised with pets, like I understood that people connected with animals. It's not that I didn't understand or have empathy for that, but it is until you actually have your own. And for me, that was when I was, when I moved to LA, it was 8 years ago. Actually, 8 years ago today, the day we're recording this, I moved to LA. Yeah, I just realized. And they came a couple months later, but like, yeah, it's been 8 years since I've had them. And that version of Nisha before didn't know this type of love, didn't know this type of connection. Yeah, I'm just like thinking about just like when I look at my cats and when I just like love them so dearly. And I feel like with the anticipatory grief, it's anxiety. It's like, what's going to happen? How is it going to happen? Is it going to be quick? Am I going to wake up and suddenly like see that they're not alive? Is it going to be a long, prolonged thing? I think about my other friends who have had cats. I'm like, should I get pet insurance? Like I get into type of mode as well, for how I can ensure their health as much as I possibly can. But really, lots of times I feel like, especially lately, I've just been trying to like pause and be mindful of like when I am with them, like what it feels like to have them interrupt me or have them like nuzzle their face in my face when I'm trying to sleep, or if they're just like laying in front of me and breathing and just like loafed up, like what a delight that is and how lucky we all are to have had this experience together. And I am so afraid of this grief because I know from so many people I know how hard it can be. And I'm going to be reading something soon that describes it. We both are. But I'll never regret it, There's a part of me that's like, oh, I don't know if I could do this again, like get another pet. But I'm also like, I can't make decisions before the decision has to be made, And really what those pre-decisions are just a reflection of the grief that I fear, and the grief that I fear with Sonia and Vera, my cats, and also whatever attachment I can have in the future. But, grief, that's why we call it grief love. That's why we said that this is our theme, because they are so connected, and to not have that love and to not take that risk to connect, like you said, means that we will be isolated, means that we will be disconnected. Just bringing it back to what you're composting, because I think, yeah, like everything we've been talking about, we have to feel that. So I am really fucking afraid of it. I'm just being straight up, but I also am just trying to, I don't know, is like cliche as it sounds, just like enjoy every moment with them and try to see what cat toys they'll actually use and play with them more. That's one thing I want to do more. Thankfully, they have each other, but I do want to like play with them more because I feel like it could be so fun, and I get kind of complacent sometimes. But now they're getting older too, so I want to be able to do that. But yeah, I'll just stop there with my story. But yeah.
I just want to reflect quickly, like a lot of what I think you're sharing reminds me of some iconic pop psychology from the past, which was Brene Brown and her work around vulnerability. I think that's like such a like mid-2000s throwback. But she really spoke at length about vulnerability and how vulnerable connection is, and how sometimes when we feel vulnerable in connection, we do move towards anticipatory grief or like, and sometimes into our own anxiety. But she said that in her research with parents who had lost children, what they repeatedly say is there is no preparing and there is no way to predict what it will feel like. And the best thing you can do is that, like you're saying, just to be present with life as it is, because life is so full of unpredictable change that sometimes we want to brace ourselves for or preemptively armor ourselves towards. And we just have to experience it. And when I say like there's no preparing, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think what you're naming, which is like feeling those anxieties, but bringing yourself to the present moment and holding their life and those moments that may seem mundane, but recognizing them as precious moments of connection. Like, I think that is a form of preparation, of just like being present and being open. I also have a friend who's so scared of their pets passing that they actually enrolled in a year-long like Buddhist study around death. And I'm like, honestly, a wise way to prepare.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a great idea. Yeah, I mean, I even do this about the people in my life too. So this is definitely a theme that happens for me. It's like a way that I try to protect myself from pain that I'll experience, but it's not going to...
fool's errand.
Yeah, seriously. Humans, we're funny little beings.
Speaking of the funny little beings, we reached out to all of you, the funny little beings listening to our voices, and asked you to share stories of pet loss and pet grief. And we received 3 stories. Do you want to share a little bit about our storyteller, Nisha, and then we'll go ahead and read them?
Yeah, so we received 3 stories from one person. Her name is Sharon Vincula, and I'm going to read her little bio that she sent us. So you can get an idea of who she is, and we're going to read the 3 stories she sent us. So Sharon Vincula is an autistic coach, advocate, and writer who empowers neurodivergent dog lovers to transform the overwhelming chaos of sensory overload into luscious, vibrant living. Drawing from personal experiences with burnout, trauma, and grief, and combining expertise from her work in occupational therapy, animal-assisted interventions, and dog training, Sharon guides individuals who are ready to reconnect with themselves, their dogs, and their deepest sense of peace. Through one-on-one coaching and consulting, Sharon offers practical tools that help you tend to your nervous system, understand your dog's behavior, and create a lifestyle that's grounded in authenticity and connection. You can connect with her or download her free co-regulation workbook at www.hc.collab.com or listen to her podcast, Happy Dog, Happy Human, for care tips and insights on living in harmony with your dog and yourself. And we will include those notes in the show notes of that website and her podcast. So we really have someone who not only has been a dog owner, an animal owner, but also someone who does this for like a living. And she so vulnerably shared these 3 stories with us, and we're really excited to read them to you and reflect on them.
The first story is called On Bravery. On the drive home from my freshman year of undergrad, my dad suspiciously pulled off the road and parked. He'd wanted to tell me before we got back to the house and had finally mustered the courage, or perhaps there was no more time to wait once we were only 20 minutes away. My dog, Bina, had cancer and she only had a few months left. I remember the day that Bina died. After her euthanasia, my family and I were walking back to the car in the parking lot. My mom turned to hug me, and then she looked at me and said, "You were so brave." I recalled feeling angry. How dare she praise me for holding in my grief, for standing stoic and mute as the life left my dear friend's body. I didn't want to be brave. I didn't want to hold it all together amidst the significant loss. I didn't even think that it was brave to appear unmoved and collected when one's heart is breaking. It would have been courageous to collapse in vulnerability and cry openly for my dog. I wanted to cry, needed to, but couldn't. I wanted to scream and shout my rage, then crumble and dissolve in my grief. I wanted to be held in safety as I fell apart, but there was no haven to lay my feelings that day. Only admiration for not having any.
Ah, yes, breath. So the next story that she shared is called On Love. I grieved for Stu after he died. I remember feeling warm when I picked up his ashes at the vet, and the receptionist said she'd hoped it would be me picking up. She'd wanted to tell me that she was sorry for my loss. Diana had written a sweet note and left it on my desk. Some of the kennel staff expressed their condolences. It felt good to be seen in my grief, for the love I had for Stu to be acknowledged even if he wasn't really my dog. But my boss at the kennel said something about how I had loved Stu too much. Stu was a dog with a bite history who'd been impounded by the city shelter and deemed dangerous. With no hope of ever being adopted to a home, he had been granted the opportunity to serve his life sentence at the kennel where I worked as the manager. I took a special interest in enhancing Stu's quality of life and arranged for him to spend days in the office with me. Stu and I had developed a trust that bloomed into friendship. His behavior improved and he even started asking for pets. How could I have loved him too much? He deserved to be loved, but more than that, he needed to be loved. How could we have helped him to feel safe and cared for, to behave more appropriately and less aggressively if we didn't love him? I do understand what my boss meant, that if I'd loved Stu less, then it wouldn't hurt so much when he died. But his advice was to feel less, to distance myself. Sure, maybe that would have been easier for me. But what is life if not loving and losing? If we spare the love to avoid the pain, we are missing out on fully being alive. And Stu came to life once I loved him. I remember one day when Tom had brought Gabby and Zico to the kennel so that we could all take a walk together after work. I had decided to bring Stu, who'd been showing more curiosity about other dogs and who had finally been given permission to take walks off the property. The sun was warm that day. Tom, Gabby, and Zico were ahead of us on the path. Stu was smiling and wagging his tail, and then he paused. He threw his snout up to the sky and let out a howl, then smiled and bounced back into the walk. He was exclaiming his joy at being included in our family time, singing a song in celebration of our love. Stu taught me that love is necessary for healing, and that it is so important for everyone to be loved.
So sweet. Oh my gosh, let's take another breath.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll be reading our final story entitled On Saying Goodbye. In 2020, I had a collection of ashes from dogs I've loved who've passed away. Stu had died in 2011 at Canines Only, a dog with a bite history who'd been impounded by the city shelter and deemed dangerous with no hope of ever being adopted to a home, had been granted the opportunity to serve his life sentence at the kennel where I was working as a dog trainer. Stu and I had developed a friendship, and he had started to take walks with my partner and our dogs not too long before his health deteriorated. He was eventually euthanized for health reasons. He never got to live the life he truly deserved, but with his body turned to ashes, I could finally take him home. Zico left us unexpectedly in 2012. An 85-pound German Shepherd, Zico was gentle and sensitive as they come. One of my favorite photos that Tom took was a moment in which Zico licked the head of a sleepy and tiny Boston Terrier pup named Lucy. My beautiful, sweet boy with love in his eyes. I'm so sorry I went to work that day and didn't know you were sick. We said goodbye to Gabby in 2016. We'd worked together for 10 years as a therapy animal handler team, visiting hospitals, nursing homes, homeless shelters, schools, and children's courts. Gabby brought me closer to other people and led me to occupational therapy. She had a zest for exploration, and we traveled across the country together 3 times, hiking countless trails and enjoying so many days at the beach. In 2020, we decided to leave California and move back to New York. I'd kept the ashes of my beloved dogs because I didn't know what else to do with them. We'd lived in an apartment, so there was no backyard in which to bury them. I wasn't going to pay for a cemetery plot, and I couldn't just throw them away. I could have continued to keep them with me, but my heart was longing for ceremony. I needed to say goodbye to these dogs. The one who traveled with me to California in the first place, and the ones I found once I was there. I also needed to say goodbye to California, the place where my found family lived, where my career took shape, where I spent most of my 20s and 30s, where I dreamt and explored and loved and lost. The plan was to drive to New York, so we charted our route north along the coast before heading east so that we could stop at Big Sur, a place that had been a favorite for us on road trips with Gabby and Zico. Stu would have loved it there too. As we wound around along Route 1 in Big Sur in early August, the clouds seemed to be surrounding us and touching the hills. We found a place to pull off the road and parked, making sure there was a path that would take us towards the water. I opened the back door and pulled out the bag that held the ashes. Then I took Tom's hand and we walked along the path. We found a spot near some trees that overlooked the ocean. A breeze was blowing, so I made sure to note which direction it was going. I opened Stu's bag first. "Be free, sweet Stu, I love you." I sent Stu's ashes with the wind. Tom opened Zico's bag next. "Remember how much he loved to run on the beach?" I said. Tom smiled. He just liked to chase Gabby, but she was too fast. We shared a sweet laugh. "Goodbye, sweet boy. Thank you for loving me." Tom released Zico's ashes to the earth. We said goodbye to Gabby last. Gabby was our dog, our first collaborative responsibility as a couple, and Tom's first dog ever. Tears stung my eyes, and Tom wiped his briefly. She had taught us so much, had made us laugh, and had helped us create our family. Thank you for sharing your joy with us, Gabby. May your spirit live on forever. Tom and I held each other and cried as the fog lifted. We eventually walked back to the car and drove on. Goodbye, California. I will never forget you, and I will never be the same because of you.
Wow. What a beautiful... Thank you, Sharon, so much for sharing these stories. I loved how that last one, too, was like the grief of the dogs and also leaving California, right? Like, yeah, there was so much richness in these stories and so much love that I'm just in awe of what you shared with us, Sharon. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Sharon. Definitely reflecting on these stories, I feel how like when we are engaged in relationship, it's about our love with that person or creature. And it's also tied to place and other relationships. Like it doesn't happen in isolation. And I also really, really love that like Sharon took us on this journey from like their first experiences with pet grief towards like this conscious ceremony of grief that they engaged in. And, in that first story, part of what I hear Sharon speaking to is something called disenfranchised or strangled grief. I don't know if you've heard those terms.
No, I haven't.
There is a distinction between them, but I think strangled grief is like when we want to express grief, but because of this, like the setting or other factors, we're not actually able to express the grief as we want to. I think disenfranchised grief speaks to how people of color are systemically targeted or pathologized for normal expressions of grief. But yeah, I really appreciated Sharon just weaving in these different moments of complexity and desire and love and care and loss and like letting go. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it truly, truly was. And I also really appreciated the ceremonial aspect of saying goodbye. And I think that it is something to be ritualized. And that, we've seen this throughout centuries of histories in so many cultures, how often we ritualize our grief through ceremony or in lots of events through ceremony. And I think that it just felt really, really beautiful. I felt like I was there with them too. I felt like it was written so beautifully as well. So yeah, thank you so much. I think like we've covered so many directions in the ways we relate to pets and the grief we experience. And I'm curious, Opulence, what are you planting from these stories?
I think I'm really planting this concept of that love is necessary for healing, and like the exchange of love is so valuable and life-giving, and that like that in itself is enough. And also just really feeling the gratitude you were expressing earlier, where it's like I cannot covet or hoard or keep or like freeze time. Like I cannot ensure that my pets will be with me forever. And I just have to give gratitude that I ever connected with them. What are you planting, Nisha?
Yeah, a lot of the same. And also recognizing that, especially from Sharon's stories, that grief about pets aren't only about the pets you own, I remember, my mom, for example, when I got my cats, like, she was like, where am I going to sleep? And she didn't talk to me for 2 weeks. She was not happy about it. Now she calls and is like, I want to do FaceTime with the cats. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? It's like so cute and sweet. And last year, one of my cousin's dogs passed away. And I was so sad about that because I remember when he was getting this dog, probably over 14, 15 years ago. And then my mom visited them in Louisiana, and my mom was so sad. She's like, she really loved me. And just seeing my mom's grief just made me see how this connection isn't just about like, this is my pet, and just showing how deep this empathy can go. Even like while you were reading that last story, I was like, had tears in my eyes. So I think it's so beautiful to see the direction of this love and of this grief, because that itself is how these seeds are planted, into this beautiful garden.
Absolutely. So powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us for this episode and also for this season where we have just reflected with these themes of love and grief. If you enjoyed this episode or any episodes this season, please help us out and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcast or YouTube. It really means so much to our podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening. Just going to echo what Opulence said. Can't wait to see those ratings and reviews, and we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
We decided that for our final episode this season, we would love to have a listener episode, and we want to hear from you.
Yeah, we're going to be doing an episode in line with our theme this season about grief, love, and pets. So some questions that can inspire you are, what are some ways you've grieved a pet that surprised you? Share stories of connecting with your pet after they died. And what have your pets taught you about love? So head to that fan mail text message button in our show notes and let us know.
And if you just want to send us a message letting us know what you thought about the podcast, we would love that too. Thank you.
Bye.
Earthworm Slumber Party is hosted by Opulence Abundance and Nisha Modi, edited and scored by Adrien Garbar, and produced by Dalya Guerin.